Hello and welcome to another video. Now, it's not true that only Europe or the old world has cold summer soups. In fact, the United States has one very classic one in American culture also called Vichyssoise. Now, Vichyssoise is a very interesting dish with an interesting history. Americans think it's French, which it almost is, but not quite. The dish as we know it today was invented in 1917 at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in New York City, where a French chef from Vichy, France, basically decided to take French potato leek soup and serve it cold as a summer soup. So this is a dish with French origins, but the particular way Americans eat it as a cold summer soup is very much an American thing, but with deep European roots. So this is a classic summer soup. So our ingredients are olive oil and butter at first, leeks and onions. We're going to take these nice starchy potatoes and we're going to peel and slice them. We're going to use chicken broth, and I got a nice chicken broth for this. And then salt, pepper, and finally at the end we will add some cream. Now we're going to start by taking butter, and that's like a tablespoon or so, and some olive oil, maybe twice that much, and we're going to go ahead and heat that here until the butter is starting to froth, and as the froth subsides, then I will add my onions. I'm going to cut my onions and my leeks, and I'll be right back. So I've taken 3 of the onions, and they're now frying in this slightly browned butter mixture, butter olive oil mixture, and I now have the heat on medium, and while these cook, I'm going to cut my my leeks. Now the onions are pretty nicely translucent. I'm going to add the leeks. Now I cut the pale and white parts off of the leek, and I always rinse them incrementally. It's a complicated process. There are a few tutorials out there for rinsing leeks. I cut off the bottom bit, then I rinse in the middle, then cut off a little more, rinse, cut off a little more, rinse. There are a number of ways you can do it, but I get the best results that way. And there's our leeks. At this point I'm going to season with some salt and pepper. That's smelling really good. And these are starting to look pretty nicely wilted, so I'm going to add the sliced potatoes. We're going to go ahead and saute this for just a few minutes, and then I'm going to add the broth. You don't want to salt this too heavily because the broth will add a lot of the salt. Although if you're making a vegetarian version, you might just use water, and then you will want to salt it much more heavily. Now, as we are continuing to saute this, the onions are continuing to caramelize slightly. We're not going to caramelize them all the way. They're just cooking down a bit. They're still in the cooking down phase, but they will caramelize just a little bit. And the leeks will continue to cook down a bit too. So that's why we sort of continue this process here. That's actually starting to look really good. So now that this is looking really good, I'm going to go ahead and add my chicken broth. And we're going to go ahead and let this cook for, I don't know, certainly until the potatoes are really nicely done. So I'd say maybe an hour. And then we'll be back. Now that the potatoes are soft, I'm going to blend it with an immersion blender. Now you can use an upright blender, but if you do, remember this is hot, and so you don't want to fill the blender very full. So I'm just going to put this in, and I'm going to cream everything together. Now for the American version, you really want to use starchy potatoes. Now for the American version, you really want to use starchy potatoes. For like a hot soup, you can use waxy potatoes, but once you cool it, the starchy potatoes are better. So we're going to eat this cool, so like baking potatoes it is. Next, I'm going to add maybe a cup or so of cream. That's about 250 grams, and just about half this bottle. And I'm going to go ahead and stir that in, and then we're going to heat it up until it just boils, and then we're going to cool it off. So I put this in the, so I let this cool down after it boiled, and I put it in the refrigerator for an hour and a half. It's still a little warmer than room temperature. We want it a little cooler than room temperature, so I'm going to put it back in for probably another hour, and if it's too cold, then I'll let it warm it up. I'll let it warm up on the counter after that. We don't want to serve this too cold because then it will just taste like mush, but we want it to be cool enough to be refreshing. And now for the taste test. At this temperature, you can really taste the leeks and the onions, the cream, the chives. They're really nice. This is one of the classic summer soups in the United States, and it's really very nice, very delicious. So I hope you enjoy it. Thank you very much for watching. Bon appetit, and see you next week.